heading to the Fernald Visitors Center to learn a little more about what went on at this property.
The land was taken by the federal government for eminent domain from the farm families. But the human history out here really starts thousands of years before European settlers got here in the 17 and 1800s. Way back, prehistoric times, this whole area, because we're so close to the Miami River and to Patty's Run Creek right along the edge of the property boundaries now, and some of the other waterways, long history of indigenous peoples usage in this area. And it's out here, but this was a very active site for human activity thousands of years before our ancestors got here. The families that owned the land here, some of them had up almost 150 years of family history on their farming plots on this site. I can't imagine what it's like to put down roots for that amount of time in one location and to build it up and improve it and raise your families on it like these folks did. Early in 51, they began to see surveyors like the guy behind you coming out on some of the land and working with their instruments. They started seeing cars with government plates and guys walking around in suits and talking to each other and everything, but they really didn't think much about it. Improvements already done on the land. There was very little they had to do with it to prep it for construction. Again, drilling straight down into the aquifer underneath their feet. They had an unlimited supply of fresh water. So that was a big plus. Proximity to Cincinnati was a big plus. All of those factored into why this place was chosen. So before construction actually started and the land was taken, the families were moving out. If you look at our headlines here, this is the Cincinnati Enquirer from March 31st, 1951. Hamilton County to get huge atomic plant, lots of jobs, good money coming to the economy, big boost for the environment or the economy. All of this was front page headlines, and then when they started building and they put the chain link fence up, veil of secrecy came down, everybody stopped talking. Nobody talked about anything. And it wasn't so much what they were producing out here with uranium metals. What they were mostly concerned about was not letting how much product was being made every month get out. This whole facility was a self-contained unit. The only thing they didn't do was house workers on site here. And the big reason for that was during the Manhattan Project, when they built these super secret production sites, they had the workers living on those sites, like at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, or out at Hanford in Washington. When the government started putting together the weapons complex during the Cold War, they said, we don't want to be responsible for any more company towns. So everybody who worked here commuted in from the outside. Nobody lived on site, even though the plants were running 24/7 all year round. And at the height of production, there were a little over 3,000 people working on site here. So not the biggest production site, but definitely not one of the smallest for sure. So this shows you what the center 200 acres or so of the site looked like when production was actively going on. To give you a little perspective, where we're standing, our building will be built on this map eventually about right here. So where these four cylinders are right here, that is now where the back of the Visitor Center parking lot is. These were four waste silos, concrete silos that were built on site to contain eventually waste material. One of those silos, the first one, closest to the bottom of the trees there, that actually contained materials left over from the Manhattan Project atomic bomb processing.
Wow.
So that was originally uranium-rich material that came from a uranium mine in the former Belgian Congo in Africa, a mine called Shinkolobwe. Right there on my barrel is what they were producing. Uranium metal feed rods. You're welcome to touch this one. This one is aluminum. It's not uranium. If it was, it certainly wouldn't be out here. And it might very well cave in the top of this barrel, because I mentioned that uranium is a heavy metal. It's very dense. This is the exact size. A derby made out of uranium that was this size and shape would weigh in at about 400 pounds.
Whoa.
So it would easily cave in the top of this. They had electrical, mechanical machinery that assisted them to lift these, because even 3 guys can't pick this up if it's uranium. So again, very dense, very heavy metal. Once the metal was cast, these derbies were piled into bigger crucibles, heated up again, and formed into ingots that weighed several thousand pounds. Those were then transported to the machine shops, where they were rolled out in big rolling mills to these long metal bars. They were cut to different lengths, and most of them were put on tooling machines and hollowed out. And the reason they were hollowed out is because when these would be put into a nuclear reactor to form plutonium, it gave more surface area on the uranium to be bombarded by the neutrons and form plutonium. So more plutonium could be formed in a feed rod that was hollow and had more surface area than one that was solid. Sites that are listed on this map right now are ones that either Fernald was directly related to in the production stream, or that had a direct link to what the processes were. So most of the material from Fernald, when the production rods were done, they were shipped out to the Hanford, Washington site to go in the nuclear reactors there. A few of them went to some of the nuclear reactors in Savannah River. Some of the material went down to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, which was still an active site, because they would test the rods. The Manhattan Project that built the first 2 atomic bombs that we dropped on Japan, that really got started officially in 41 or 42, shortly after Pearl Harbor was bombed. The bombs were used in 45. This site was built in 51. So the technology for this facility on a massive scale was less than 10 years old at that time. So this was cutting edge science at the time, and they were figuring out still how to take it from the laboratory on a small scale into mass production. Workers in some of the areas at that time is that's why they have the stool over there, because the guard would be sitting on a stool right next to it. The worker would come up here, put their arm down inside, and then they would press the red button and it would scan one half of their body. Then they would turn and do the same thing to the other side. We do that on the other side too, and they had sensitive areas that would read all parts of your body. So if the guard said, oh, the alarm's going off, your foot's reading hot, go change your shoes. Your hand's reading hot, meaning radioactive, you go wash your hands. If other parts of your body measured hot, they'd say go take a shower and change all your clothes. This is one of the signs that were all over the property at that time in production. Sensitive information is important. Button it up. You don't talk about it to people at all. This is the typical uniform that workers wore in production. It was a one-piece cotton coverall with a beanie, and the work boots, which were steel-toed, obviously for industrial purposes. All of this was provided by the company. The company also provided the workers t-shirts and underwear and socks. Our awareness of nuclear energy raised by 3 Mile Island on the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. And in 1986, of course, the big one that most people think of when they think of nuclear accidents was at
Chernobyl.
Right, Chernobyl. That really put nuclear energy and nuclear processes on people's radars, and they began to look at things. There were also a couple of releases of uranium-laced dust from some of the dust collectors on the production site. That began to concern the community. Again, some of the waste in the waste pits, when it would rain, that liquid went into Patty's Run Creek and other waterways around here and got absorbed into the groundwater. And as we go around the corner, this began to make headlines.
This facility is an environmental disaster threatening the health and safety of thousands of Ohioans.
Arriving in Ohio today, President Reagan tried to dispel concerns.
I am assured by the Secretary of Energy that that will not be open to run unless it has delivered
So they agreed to that. It also cut down on the final price tag of what this place was. And I mentioned earlier it was $4.4 billion was the final price tag. Some of the cleanups on other sites since then are up into the hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
But it's got to be done. This stuff has to be cleaned up and remediated as best it can be. So it was so vast out here that they had to break the cleanup into 5 what they call operable areas. And each of those areas, like one was the waste pits, other waste units, one was the silos, one was the environmental media, and one was the production area. And some of the cleanup areas, like those silos, they had to build infrastructure over that one silo so they could safely empty it and contain the radon gas and stabilize it and to be shipped off site. Once that was done, then they had to take down that infrastructure they built before they went in, and you can see on the interactive display that'll pop up in just a minute, some of the stuff had to be done by hand. Then they had to take down the buildings. And there's one of the silos being taken down. That was an empty one, but you saw them hosing down the silo as they took it down. Again, that was all about mitigating the dust that was created. Yeah, so in that on-site disposal facility, there are chunks of metal where the I-beams were cut up, there are blocks of concrete, there's soil that they dug up from underneath the buildings, there's all of the coal ash that was in the fly ash pit from coal that was burned in the power plant on site. All of that was put in there too. Anything that was below low-level radioactive waste went in there.
Okay.
That little tiny volume that was the really bad stuff, that's what went off-site. And another thing that is a plus for how they did things out here, you have workers, some of them who had been on site 40, 50 years almost. This was their livelihood. They were about to lose their jobs. They've been providing for their families their entire life by working out here. So they were in the beginning very hostile about the citizens group coming out and protesting what was going on. You know, all those hippie tree huggers, what are they doing?
Yeah.
You know? And some of the workers, though, began to listen to what they were saying and started wondering, what have I been exposed to? What has this done to me, possibly?
Yeah.
They also retrained a lot of the workers to other jobs, provided training for other jobs. Some of the workers stayed on and got retrained to help with the cleanup. The official cleanup was 96 to 2006. This building was originally built as a warehouse to store clean material for cleanup, incoming material. And part of the record of decision by the community as to what they wanted the site to be once cleanup was done, they decided we want it to be a wildlife preserve, unimproved park with an emphasis on wildlife. Again, no recreational facilities, no basketball court, no golf course, no nothing like that, no picnicking on the site. We'll have it for the wildlife, but they did want a museum on site that would tell the Fernald story and also talk about the cleanup and talk about the wildlife.